I'm Naomi, 34, and I've spent my entire life climbing the ladder from financial struggle to stability through sheer determination and countless sacrifices. For years, I've been the family bank loaning money whenever crisis struck, even helping pay off their massive $180,000 debt. I postponed my wedding and dreams to keep them afloat. This morning, I checked my phone and discovered I wasn't invited to our traditional Easter gathering. My mother's text still burns on the screen. You make us feel poor. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family turn your success against you. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in suburban Michigan, you'd never guess my family was drowning in debt. The four-bedroom house, the annual vacations, the new cars every few years, all created an illusion of comfort. But underneath that carefully maintained facade, my parents were financial disasters waiting to happen. My father worked in luxury car sales, which meant our income fluctuated wildly from month to month. Some months he'd bring home impressive commission checks that would lead to extravagant family dinners and shopping sprees. Other months, I'd overhear hushed arguments about which bills could wait another week. My mother never worked a traditional job, claiming her role was managing the household. In reality, she managed to spend whatever came in with remarkable efficiency. Designer clothes, expensive home decor, and lavish birthday parties for my siblings were her specialties. When I once asked why we needed a third television for our house, she told me, "We deserve nice things, Naomi. Life is for living." I have 3 siblings who inherited my parents' carefree approach to money. My older brother Tyler was always the golden child, charming and charismatic, who convinced my parents to buy him a car at 16 that they clearly couldn't afford. My younger sisters Amanda and Kate were twins who treated my parents' credit cards as extensions of their own wallets throughout high school. Then there was me, always the odd one out. When I received money for my 10th birthday, I immediately wanted to put it in my piggy bank. My father laughed and told everyone at my party, "This one's going to be our little accountant someday." It wasn't meant as a compliment. While my siblings blew through allowances on mall trips and video games, I saved religiously. By 14, I had several $100s tucked away in a savings account my grandmother had helped me open. My family found my frugality amusing at best and annoying at worst. "Why are you so obsessed with saving?" Amanda would ask while showing off her new clothes. "You can't take it with you when you die, you know." The summer before high school, I overheard another late-night argument about money that scared me enough to take action. The next day, I applied for my working papers and landed a weekend job at the local grocery store. By 16, I was working nearly 30 hours a week between that job and babysitting. My parents seemed simultaneously proud and perplexed by my work ethic. "Naomi's got her first job," my father would tell his friends before adding with a wink, "though I keep telling her to enjoy being young while she can." What they didn't understand was that I wasn't working for spending money like my friends were. I was working because I'd seen the stress and shame that financial instability created, and I was determined to chart a different course for myself. By senior year, while my classmates were focused on prom and parties, I had nearly $15,000 saved for college. My guidance counselor helped me apply for every scholarship possible, and I eventually received a partial scholarship to State University, where I planned to study business with a focus on finance. My parents threw a graduation party where relatives gave me cash gifts for college. I overheard my mother telling my aunt, "She's so serious about money. I keep telling her college is about the experience, not just the classes." The real contrast between my path and my siblings became apparent during college. While I worked full-time at an insurance office and took a full course load, my brother Tyler dropped out after 3 semesters with nothing to show but student loan debt. Amanda attended community college sporadically while working retail, and Kate bounced between different schools, changing her major 4 times. I lived in the cheapest off-campus housing I could find, ate simple meals I prepared myself, and declined most invitations that would cost money. My roommates thought I was extreme, but I graduated in 4 years with my business degree and less than $10,000 in student loans, which I was determined to pay off within a year. The day I walked across the stage at graduation, my father hugged me and said, "Now you can finally stop worrying so much about money and start enjoying life." I smiled politely, but inside I knew that my careful approach to finances wasn't a phase to outgrow, but the foundation for the life I wanted to build. 2 weeks after graduation, I started my first professional job as a junior financial analyst at a growing investment firm in Chicago. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but the growth potential was. More importantly, it was a step toward complete financial independence, which had become my most precious goal. My siblings teased me about my tiny studio apartment and secondhand furniture, but I was proud. Every item I owned was paid for, every bill was within my budget, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't surrounded by the anxiety of financial precariousness. I was building something different for myself, brick by careful brick. The first 5 years of my career passed in a blur of 60-hour work weeks, additional certifications, and carefully tracked investments. While my friends from college complained about being stuck in entry-level positions, I had already been promoted twice at Westlake Investment Partners. By 27, I was managing my own small team and had nearly tripled my starting salary. My approach to personal finance remained disciplined, bordering on austere by most people's standards. I lived in the same studio apartment for 3 years, before allowing myself to upgrade to a one-bedroom. I drove the same reliable sedan I'd purchased used after graduation. I contributed the maximum to my 401k and had built an emergency fund that could cover 6 months of expenses. Every financial decision I made was deliberate and researched. I tracked my spending down to the dollar, invested consistently, and set clear goals with timelines. My coworkers called me the budget whisperer after I helped several of them create personal financial plans. At 28, I achieved one of my biggest goals, buying my first home. It wasn't anything fancy, just a modest 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood, but it was mine. The day I signed the closing papers, I felt a sense of accomplishment that brought tears to my eyes. I remembered all those nights as a teenager, counting my savings, all the social events I'd skipped to work extra shifts, and it had led to this moment. I invited my family to my housewarming party, excited to show them what I'd achieved. My parents came with obligatory housewarming gifts, but I could sense their discomfort as they toured my new home. "It's very sensible," my mother said, which in her language was hardly a compliment. My siblings were more direct in their assessment. "This is what you've been saving for all these years?" Tyler asked, looking around with unveiled disappointment. "It's so ordinary." What they couldn't understand was that to me, this ordinary home represented extraordinary freedom. I was building wealth and security while they were all still renting, or in Tyler's case, living in our parents' basement after his second divorce. Just 3 months after my housewarming party, I received a frantic call from my mother. My father had been let go from the dealership where he'd worked for nearly 2 decades. At 57, he was struggling to find another position that would pay similarly, and they were 2 months behind on their mortgage. "We might lose the house, Naomi," my mother sobbed into the phone. "Everything we've worked for gone." The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. Their financial house of cards was finally collapsing, and they had turned to the daughter they'd always thought was too careful with money. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help. I had just received my annual bonus, and while I had planned to invest it, I instead wrote my parents a check for $25,000, enough to catch up on their mortgage and other overdue bills. "This is a loan," I said firmly as I handed them the check. "I've drawn up a simple repayment agreement. You can start paying me back in small amounts once Dad finds another job." They agreed tearfully, signing the paper and hugging me with genuine gratitude. "We'll pay you back every penny," my father promised. "You're saving our home, Naomi." That was the last time the repayment was ever mentioned. Within 6 months, my father found a lower-paying position at another dealership, and my parents adjusted by cutting back slightly but continuing to live beyond their means. When I gently brought up the loan, my mother looked wounded. "We're still getting back on our feet, honey. You're doing so well, and we're so proud. You wouldn't miss that money anyway, right?" That $25,000 became the first of many loans that were really gifts. Over the next few years, the requests came with increasing frequency. $2,000 for Tyler's emergency dental work. $1,500 when Kate's car needed major repairs. $3,000 when my parents' roof leaked. Each time the request came with promises of repayment that never materialized. I began to dread family gatherings because they often included subtle or not so subtle financial requests. The resentment grew inside me, but so did the guilt. I was doing well financially while my family struggled. Wasn't it my responsibility to help? Wasn't that what family did for each other? Then I met Jordan at a charity event hosted by my firm. He was a financial advisor at a different company, intelligent and thoughtful, with a quiet confidence I found attractive. On our third date, I mentioned offhandedly that I needed to transfer some money to my parents for yet another crisis. "That happens a lot," he asked, his tone curious rather than judgmental. "More than I'd like to admit." I confessed. "They're not great with money." "And you're their safety net," he observed. That simple statement hit me like a revelation. I was their safety net, and that role was beginning to define our relationship. Jordan didn't press the issue that night, but over the next few months of dating, he asked thoughtful questions that made me examine these patterns more critically. "Do you think helping them financially is actually helping them in the long run?" he asked once after I vented about my father's decision to lease a new car despite still being in debt. With Jordan's gentle encouragement, I began setting some boundaries. I created a specific family fund with limits on how much I would give in a year. I started saying no to certain requests, particularly from my siblings. It was hard, and the guilt was overwhelming at times, but it also felt necessary for my own well-being. Around this time, I received a significant promotion at work to senior investment director, which came with a substantial salary increase and bigger bonus potential. I had also made several successful investments that were beginning to pay off handsomely. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just financially stable, I was genuinely prospering. My family's reaction to my growing success was complex. On the surface, they expressed pride and congratulations, but underneath I could sense a current of resentment and jealousy that manifested in subtle ways. "Look at Ms. Wall Street over here," Tyler would say when I arrived for family dinners. "Coming to mingle with us common folk. Must be nice to have so much money you don't know what to do with it," my mother would comment when I mentioned any purchase, no matter how reasonable. They began referring to me as the rich one in family conversations, despite the fact that I lived more modestly than they did. They made jokes about my money hoarding and called me stingy when I didn't immediately offer to pay for family expenses. The dynamic was becoming increasingly toxic, but I didn't know how to change it without completely cutting them off financially, which I wasn't prepared to do. They were still my family, and despite everything, I loved them and wanted to help when I truly could. What I didn't realize then was that the worst financial crisis and the biggest test of our family relationships was yet to come. Jordan proposed to me after a year and a half of dating on a quiet evening at home, rather than with an elaborate public gesture, which perfectly matched my preference for meaningful simplicity over showy displays. The ring was elegant, but not ostentatious, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. We decided on a wedding that reflected our values, planning a ceremony and reception for about 80 guests at a charming historic venue in Chicago. Nothing extravagant, but beautiful and significant. I had saved specifically for this occasion and had a clear budget that wouldn't derail our other financial goals. My family seemed genuinely happy for me, though my mother couldn't resist suggesting larger venues and more elaborate decorations during our initial wedding discussions. "You only get married once, Naomi," she insisted, "and you can afford to make it special." I gently but firmly explained that our plans already felt special to us, and she eventually backed down. 3 months before our wedding date, my parents asked if they could come over to discuss something important. The serious tone in my father's voice gave me a sense of foreboding. They arrived looking uncharacteristically subdued. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and my father couldn't meet my gaze. They sat awkwardly on my living room sofa, and after some uncomfortable small talk, my father finally spoke. Naomi were in trouble. Serious financial trouble. Over the next hour, the full extent of their situation emerged. My father had developed a gambling problem over the past few years, something he had hidden from everyone. What started as occasional casino visits had escalated to online poker and sports betting, resulting in nearly $70,000 of debt spread across multiple credit cards. Simultaneously, my mother had been dealing with chronic back pain that required surgery. Her insurance only partially covered, adding another $30,000 to their debt. They had taken out a second mortgage on the house, maxed out all their credit cards, and even borrowed from predatory payday lenders in desperate attempts to stay afloat. The total debt was staggering $180,000. "We're facing bankruptcy," my father said, his voice breaking. "We could lose everything." "Your siblings can't help," my mother added quickly. "Tyler just started that new job and is paying child support. The girls are barely making ends meet with their student loans." The unspoken message was clear. I was their only hope. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were asking. The amount they needed would completely deplete my wedding fund and most of my other savings. It would set back all my financial goals by years. "I need some time to think," I finally said. "This is a lot to take in." After they left, I called Jordan in tears. He came over immediately, and we stayed up most of the night discussing options and implications. I was torn between my love for my parents and the recognition that this pattern of financial rescue was deeply unhealthy. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," Jordan said, holding my hands tightly in his. "If we need to postpone the wedding, we can do that. If you want to help them with conditions attached, I'll support that too. We'll figure this out together." His unwavering support gave me the strength to make one of the most difficult decisions of my life. The next day, I called my parents and asked them to come back over this time with all their financial documents. "I'm willing to help," I told them when they arrived. "But this time, there will be non-negotiable conditions." My terms were strict. They would attend financial counseling sessions regularly. My father would join Gamblers Anonymous. They would cut up all credit cards. They would create and stick to a budget that I would help develop. And most painfully, they would sign a formal agreement acknowledging this was a final bailout. And, I added, my voice catching, "Jordan and I will be postponing our wedding indefinitely to make this possible." My mother began to cry while my father looked both relieved and ashamed. "We never wanted to ruin your wedding," he said. "I know," I replied, though part of me wondered if they had considered any consequences beyond their immediate crisis. Over the next 2 years, I systematically paid off their various debts, starting with the highest interest loans. Every payment felt like watching my own dreams temporarily fade. The wedding venue deposit was non-refundable. The carefully selected honeymoon package was canceled. The perfect dress hung unworn in my closet. Beyond the wedding, other life goals were put on hold. The home renovation projects Jordan and I had planned for our future living space were shelved. Our discussions about starting a family were postponed. Even small pleasures like weekend trips or dining out became rare luxuries, as I directed every available dollar toward resolving my parents' financial catastrophe. To their credit, my parents initially complied with my conditions. My father attended GA meetings and financial counseling sessions. My mother got a part-time job at a local boutique. They lived on a strict budget that left little room for extras. For the first time, they seemed to truly recognize the severity of their situation and the magnitude of my sacrifice. The wedding finally happened 3 years after our original date. It was smaller than initially planned, held in a community garden with a reception at a local restaurant. Beautiful in its simplicity, but not what we had originally envisioned. My parents gave an emotional toast acknowledging all Naomi has done for our family, which brought tears to my eyes. For a moment, I thought perhaps the painful journey had been worth it for this growth and recognition. That sentiment lasted less than 6 months. As soon as the last debt payment was made, my parents' commitment to financial responsibility began to waver. My father started golfing again with his big spender friends. My mother's shopping bags from expensive stores began appearing in social media photos. When I gently mentioned concern during a family dinner, my father waved it off. We learned our lesson, Naomi. But we can't live like monks forever. A little enjoyment isn't going to put us back in debt. The words stung because I recognized the rationalization pattern that had led to their problems in the first place. My siblings, who had been largely uninvolved in the debt repayment process, seemed to share my parents' attitude that the crisis was over and everything could return to normal. But for me, normal had been forever altered. I had sacrificed years of my life and significant financial security to rescue my family, and their casual return to old habits felt like a profound disrespect of that sacrifice. Jordan noticed my distress after family gatherings. "They don't seem to understand what you did for them," he observed quietly one night as we drove home from my parents' house. "They say they're grateful," I replied, "but their actions tell a different story." "Gratitude isn't just words," Jordan said. "It's changed behavior." That conversation planted a seed that would grow into the first major confrontation with my family over our unhealthy financial dynamics. 2 years after the final debt payment, my career continued to flourish. I had been recruited by a larger investment firm with an impressive client portfolio, and my compensation had increased accordingly. Jordan and I had finally completed the home renovations we'd postponed and were actively building our retirement and investment accounts back to where they should have been. We were focused on making up for lost time financially, which meant continuing our relatively frugal lifestyle despite our increased income. We took one modest vacation a year, drove reliable but not luxury vehicles, and made thoughtful decisions about major purchases. My family, meanwhile, seemed to view my ongoing financial discipline as some sort of personality defect rather than a conscious choice. Comments about my being obsessed with money, or unable to enjoy life, became more frequent at family gatherings. "When are you going to stop counting pennies and actually live a little?" my brother Tyler asked at a family barbecue. "You're making good money now, but you still act like you're broke." "Some people find joy in security rather than spending," Jordan replied, before I could his tone friendly but firm. "Yeah, well, some people are just boring," Tyler shot back with a laugh that didn't quite disguise the barb. What made these interactions more frustrating was watching my siblings repeat the same financial mistakes our parents had made. Tyler bought an expensive truck he clearly couldn't afford. Amanda and her new fiancé put a lavish engagement party on credit cards. Kate took out a mortgage on a house that stretched her budget to the breaking point. And my parents encouraged all of it. "You deserve nice things," they'd say, echoing the mantra of my childhood. "Life is for living." When I occasionally offered gentle financial advice, the response was immediate and hostile. "Not everyone wants to live like a miser, Naomi," Amanda snapped when I suggested she consider a smaller wedding venue. "Some of us actually want to enjoy our special day, not pinch pennies." The tension came to a head at Christmas that year. I had carefully selected practical gifts for everyone, items I knew they needed or would use regularly. My brother Tyler had mentioned needing new winter boots, so I found a high-quality pair on sale. For Amanda, who was trying to eat healthier, I bought a good blender. Kate received a gift card to her favorite home goods store to help with her new house. In contrast, my siblings gave each other extravagant gifts I knew they couldn't afford. The latest electronics designer clothes expensive wine collections. My parents received a luxury weekend getaway from all three of them, while I got a generic scented candle set that still had the clearance sticker partially visible. "Naomi's gifts are always so practical," my mother commented with a thin smile as we cleaned up after dinner. "I remember when you were little you'd get so excited about giving presents. Now everything's like a financial decision for you." "I try to give things people actually need," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "Christmas isn't about need, honey. It's about joy and generosity." The implication that my gifts weren't generous hit a nerve after all I had sacrificed for my family. I remained quiet, but the hurt must have shown on my face. "Oh, don't be sensitive," my mother said, patting my arm. "I know you care in your own way." Later, as we were preparing to leave, my father pulled me aside for what I thought would be a private moment of connection. Instead, he chuckled and said, "You know the way the market's been lately? We might need another Naomi bailout soon. Got any spare change in those investment accounts?" It was meant as a joke, but after years of financial sacrifice, something in me snapped. Jordan saw my expression change and gently touched my elbow, but I was already speaking. "That's not funny, Dad," I said, my voice tight. "Do you have any idea what helping with your debt cost me? What it cost Jordan and me?" The room fell silent. My father's smile faded. "It was a joke, Naomi. Lighten up. 3 years of my life isn't a joke," I continued, unable to stop now that the dam had broken. "My wedding, our home renovations, our plans to start a family all put on hold so you wouldn't lose your house. And I've never heard a genuine thank you. Just jokes about my money obsession and criticism of my practical gifts." My mother stepped forward, her expression a mixture of shock and anger. "How dare you throw that in our faces at Christmas? We said thank you. We've expressed our gratitude countless times." "Words aren't gratitude," I said, echoing Jordan's observation. "Changed behavior is gratitude." "But you're all still spending money you don't have, and making the same choices that led to the crisis in the first place." My siblings had gathered around now, their expressions uniformly hostile. "So you're keeping score," Tyler said coldly. "Every loan, every gift comes with strings attached, and a running tally is that it—" "That's not what I meant." I started, but Amanda cut me off. "You've always thought you were better than us because of your precious financial discipline," she said. "You love lording it over us, how responsible you are while we're all such disasters." "We get it, Naomi," Kate added. "You're the financial control freak who thinks her way is the only right way to live." I looked at their angry faces, these people I had sacrificed so much for, and felt a wave of despair wash over me. "That's not true," I said, my voice breaking. "I just wanted to help, and I thought maybe you'd learn from what happened." "Learn what?" my father demanded. "That money is more important than family, than enjoying life, than actually living instead of just existing." Jordan stepped forward, then putting his arm around me. "I think we should go," he said quietly. "This isn't productive for anyone." "Yes, take your financially responsible wife home," Tyler said mockingly, "before she has to witness any more of our irresponsible joy." The drive home was silent except for my muffled sobs. Jordan held my hand across the console, occasionally squeezing it gently in silent support. "They don't see it," I finally said as we neared our home. "They don't see any of it." "No," Jordan agreed softly. "They don't want to see it. Seeing it would mean acknowledging their part in what happened." For weeks afterward, communication with my family was minimal and strained. My parents sent a text 2 days after Christmas that read, "We're sorry if feelings were hurt. We love you and appreciate everything you've done for us." Family should be able to joke and be honest with each other without it becoming a big issue. The non-apology only deepened my hurt. I responded with a lengthy, heartfelt letter explaining how their attitudes about money affected me and how dismissive they'd been of my choices and sacrifices. I tried to be gentle but honest, ending with an expression of love and hope that we could develop a healthier relationship moving forward. The response was a brief message from my mother. "We hear you. Let's move past this now." No acknowledgement of the issues I'd raised, no commitment to change, just a desire to sweep everything under the rug as had always been our family's way. I tried to accept this as the best they could offer, but a sense of unresolved tension lingered between us. Little did I know this tension was about to explode in a way that would permanently alter our family dynamics. In the weeks following the Christmas confrontation, I made sincere efforts to maintain a relationship with my family despite the tension. I called my parents weekly, sent thoughtful text messages to my siblings, and tried to focus on non-financial topics during our interactions. The responses I received were polite but distant, as if everyone was walking on eggshells around me. Easter had always been a significant holiday in our family. My mother prided herself on her elaborate Easter brunches with color-coordinated decorations, specially ordered desserts, and an egg hunt for the younger cousins. For 20 years, I hadn't missed a single Easter celebration, even driving 4 hours through a surprise spring snowstorm one year to make it home. As April approached, I began to notice my sister Amanda posting about Easter preparations on social media. There were photos of pastel decorations, a new tablecloth my mother had purchased, and discussion of the menu planning. Yet I hadn't received any information about the gathering. After seeing Amanda's post about finalizing the Easter guest list, I sent my mother a casual text. "What time should we arrive for Easter brunch this year? Can I bring anything?" The response didn't come until the following day, and when it did, it felt like a physical blow. "Naomi, we thought it might be best if you skipped Easter this year. Things have been tense since Christmas, and everyone is still a bit uncomfortable. To be honest, your success makes everyone else feel bad about their finances. You make us feel poor and inadequate every time you visit, even when you don't say anything. Maybe a break would be good for everyone." I stared at the phone in disbelief, reading and rereading the message. I had been excluded from a family tradition because my financial responsibility made others uncomfortable, because my success was somehow an indictment of their choices. Before I could formulate a response, texts from my siblings arrived in quick succession. "Mom told me she messaged you about Easter. I think it's for the best, sis. Every family gathering turns into a financial tension fest lately." Amanda: "I know you're probably upset about Easter, but after Christmas, everyone's just not ready to deal with more money talks and judgment." Kate: "Sorry about Easter. Maybe next year when things aren't so raw." The coordinated messages made it clear this hadn't been a unilateral decision by my mother, but a family discussion from which I'd been excluded. They had all talked about me, decided I was the problem, and chosen to cut me out, rather than address the real issues. I sat at my kitchen table, phone in hand, as tears streamed down my face. Years of support, hundreds of thousands of dollars given my own dreams, deferred all for a family that now saw my very presence as an uncomfortable reminder of their financial failures. Jordan found me there an hour later when he returned from his Saturday morning run. One look at my face told him something was seriously wrong. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling beside my chair. Wordlessly, I handed him my phone. His expression darkened as he read the messages. "They're excluding you from Easter because you're financially responsible, because you succeeded despite everything." The rare anger in his voice matched the feeling burning in my chest. Apparently, my existence makes them feel bad about their choices. I said, my voice hollow. Jordan pulled me into a tight embrace. "Their feelings about your success are their problem, not yours," he said firmly. "You have nothing to apologize for." I didn't respond to any of the messages that day. What could I say that wouldn't either escalate the situation or require me to apologize for something that wasn't wrong? That Sunday, sitting in our living room with the knowledge that my family was gathering without me just across town, I scrolled through social media against my better judgment. There they all were, smiling in family photos around my mother's elaborately decorated table. The same table I had helped pay to refinish after their debt crisis. In my childhood home that I had saved from foreclosure. Celebrating without me because my success was too uncomfortable a reminder of what could have been if they'd made different choices. "We shouldn't stay here today," Jordan said gently, taking my phone and setting it aside. "Let's get out of the city, clear our heads." We packed overnight bags and drove to a small cabin Jordan had found online, nestled in the woods, about 2 hours outside Chicago. The quiet, natural setting provided the perfect space for reflection, and for the first time, I allowed myself to fully examine the pattern of financial abuse that had characterized my family relationships for years. "They only value me for what I can give them," I said as we sat on the cabin's porch that evening. "When I was writing checks, I was the beloved daughter and sister. When I started setting boundaries, I became the villain." Jordan nodded slowly. "I think there's something even deeper happening. Your success challenges the narrative they've built to justify their choices. If you can succeed through discipline and planning, it means their struggles aren't just bad luck or circumstances. It means choices matter. His observation resonated profoundly. My very existence as a financially stable person contradicted their belief that financial problems were inevitable, that debt was just part of life, that spending beyond your means was normal. Rather than question their choices, they had found it easier to exclude the person who represented an alternative path. "I can't keep doing this," I said finally. "I can't keep being the family bank and emotional punching bag. Something has to change." "What are you thinking?" Jordan asked. "I'm going to cut off all financial support." I said, the decision crystallizing as I spoke. No more loans, no more gifts, no more bailing anyone out. If they only want me around when I'm writing checks, let's see what happens when that stops. Jordan squeezed my hand supportively. "I think that's overdue. And maybe I need to limit contact for a while," I continued. "Not cut them off completely, but create some distance until they can respect my boundaries." "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," Jordan assured me. "Your family should lift you up, not tear you down for your accomplishments." As we drove back to Chicago the next day, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The grief of family rejection was still raw, but beneath it was a growing sense of freedom from toxic patterns that had drained me for years. I didn't know yet how my family would react to my new boundaries, but I was determined to stand firm regardless. What I couldn't have anticipated was just how dramatically things would escalate when I finally took a stand. Upon returning from our weekend retreat, I found several casual texts from my family members acting as if nothing unusual had happened. My mother sent a message about some TV show she thought I might enjoy. Tyler asked if I could recommend a good auto insurance company. Amanda shared photos of Easter desserts with the comment, "Missed you yesterday." The disconnect between excluding me from a family gathering and then resuming normal communication was jarring, but typical of our family's pattern of avoiding difficult conversations. For a moment, I considered letting it slide, as I always had, smoothing things over to maintain peace, but something had fundamentally shifted in me during that weekend away. I was done being the family financial safety net without reciprocal respect for my boundaries and choices. When my brother sent a text on Wednesday asking if I could loan him $800 for car repairs, I saw it as the perfect opportunity to establish my new boundaries. "I'm not in a position to help with that right now," I replied simply. No lengthy explanation, no apology, just a clear refusal. His response was immediate and incredulous. "Seriously, I know you've got the money. It's just $800. "I'm sorry, but the answer is no," I repeated. Within an hour, my phone was flooding with messages from every family member. "Tyler, thanks for leaving me stranded. Real sisterly of you." My mother, "Tyler really needs help with his car. I know things have been tense, but family helps family." My father, "Is this because of Easter? That was your mother's idea, not mine. Don't punish your brother over it." Amanda, "You're being petty now. Everyone knows you can easily afford to help Tyler." The barrage of guilt-tripping messages confirmed everything I had realized during our weekend away. My value to my family was measured primarily by my willingness to provide financial support. The exclusion from Easter hadn't been an isolated incident, but a symptom of a deeply dysfunctional dynamic. My mother's next message pushed me over the edge. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you behave. You're abandoning your family over a petty Easter misunderstanding." Everything they had done for me. The audacity of that statement after years of one-way financial support ignited something in me. Without allowing myself to reconsider, I opened my banking app and took screenshots of every transfer I had made to family members over the past 5 years. I created a document listing every loan that had never been repaid, every bill I had covered, every crisis I had resolved. The total was staggering even to me who had lived through it. Nearly $300,000 over 5 years, including the massive debt bailout. I added notes about the personal costs, including the postponed wedding, delayed home projects, and years of stress. I compiled everything into a single document and attached it to a group text to my parents and siblings. My message was simple and direct. This is what financial responsibility looks like. This is what I've contributed to this family while being criticized for being obsessed with money. I'm blocking everyone until you're ready to apologize and respect my boundaries. As soon as I sent it, I systematically blocked their numbers and social media accounts. I needed space to process, without the immediate backlash I knew would come. Jordan, watching me go through this difficult process, offered quiet support, but let me take the lead on how to handle my family. "Are you okay?" he asked when I finally put my phone down. "No," I admitted, "but I will be." For 20 blissful minutes, my world was silent. No incoming messages, no guilt trips, no financial requests disguised as family emergencies. I made a cup of tea and sat with Jordan in our living room, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Then the doorbell rang, followed by insistent pounding. Through the peephole, I could see my sister Amanda, her face flushed with anger. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "How dare you!" she shouted, pushing past me into the entryway. "How dare you send that spreadsheet and humiliate everyone? Do you know how Mom is crying right now?" "Amanda, I'm not discussing this when you're shouting," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "Please leave and we can talk when everyone has calmed down." "You've been keeping a ledger on your family," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Tracking every dollar like some kind of loan shark. That's sick, Naomi. That's not what family does." "What family does," I replied evenly, "is respect each other, not exclude someone from holidays because their success makes others uncomfortable, not only call when they need money." Jordan had appeared in the hallway, his presence a silent support. Amanda glanced at him, then back at me. "You've changed," she said accusingly. "Ever since you married him, you've pulled away from the family. He's turned you against us." "Jordan has only encouraged me to value myself," I corrected her, "and to recognize when I'm being used." "Used?" she laughed bitterly. "Is that what you think? That your family is using you? When was the last time any of you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not to complain about finances, just to connect. When was the last time anyone asked about my goals or celebrated my successes without making it about how it affects them?" Amanda had no immediate response to that. In the silence, I heard my phone buzzing repeatedly from the living room where I'd left it. Jordan went to check. "Your father is leaving voicemails on my phone," he reported, returning with his cell. "Since you've blocked his number, apparently I'm the next target." I sighed deeply. "Amanda, please go. Tell everyone I need space. We can talk about this when everyone is calmer and ready to have a real conversation about our relationship moving forward." "This isn't over," she warned, as she moved reluctantly toward the door. "You can't just cut off your family and expect everyone to beg for forgiveness." After she left, I listened to the voicemails my father had left for Jordan. They ranged from angry accusations about turning my daughter against her family to tearful pleas to help Naomi see reason. Not once did he acknowledge any wrongdoing or address the actual issues I had raised. I sat heavily on the couch, emotionally exhausted. "They still don't get it," I said to Jordan. "They see me as the problem, not the dynamic." Jordan sat beside me, taking my hand. "Change is hard, especially when it requires acknowledging mistakes. Give them time." "I don't know if time will be enough," I replied. Then an idea struck me, something that would either build a bridge or burn it completely. I contacted the financial counselor who had helped my parents during their debt crisis, explaining the situation and asking if they would be willing to facilitate a family financial discussion. To my surprise, the counselor agreed, expressing concern about the ongoing unhealthy patterns. I paid for a series of sessions up front, then sent a final message to my family before reinforcing my communication block. "I've scheduled and paid for family financial counseling with Dr. Matthews starting next Tuesday at 6. This is the last money I will spend on this family until behaviors change." Whether you attend or not is your choice, but this is the only pathway back to a relationship with me. It was the ultimate power move, one that acknowledged both my desire to help and my absolute requirement for fundamental change. I had no idea if they would show up or how they would respond, but for the first time in our relationship, I had set a boundary with real consequences and refused to back down. The chaos that followed was predictable. More angry messages to Jordan, another unexpected visit from Tyler this time, and even a tearful call to my office from my mother that my assistant thankfully shielded me from. Some reactions were rageful, others guilt-inducing, but they all shared one characteristic: they focused on my betrayal, rather than examining the patterns that had led to this breaking point. I maintained my distance and my resolve, uncertain if this rupture would lead to healing or permanent estrangement, but finally clear that either outcome was preferable to continuing in the dysfunctional cycle that had dominated our relationship for so long. The 6 months following my confrontation with my family were some of the most challenging and ultimately transformative of my life. True to my word, I maintained complete separation from my parents and older siblings, focusing instead on my own healing and rebuilding the financial security that years of family bailouts had eroded. Jordan suggested I consider therapy to process the complex emotions around what he correctly identified as financial trauma. "You've been carrying this weight for so long," he said gently. "Professional support might help you put it down." The therapist I found specialized in family dynamics and financial issues, a combination that proved invaluable. Dr. Lin helped me recognize patterns that stretched back to childhood, how my role as the responsible one had been both a source of strength and a burden that defined my family relationships. "Your financial success threatens the narrative your family has constructed," she observed during one session. "If you can succeed through discipline and planning, it undermines their belief that financial struggles are inevitable or beyond their control." Meanwhile, Jordan and I focused on rebuilding our savings and planning for our future with a freedom I hadn't allowed myself before. We discussed having children, travel we wanted to experience, and career goals, without the constant shadow of potential family emergencies looming over every decision. I never realized how much mental energy I spent worrying about the next family crisis. I told Jordan one evening as we updated our 5-year plan, "It's like I've been holding my breath for years and can finally exhale." I had no direct contact with my family, but occasionally received updates through mutual friends or distant relatives. From these snippets, I learned that my parents had attended 2 financial counseling sessions before quitting, calling the counselor judgmental and aligned with Naomi's unreasonable standards. My brother Tyler hadn't attended any sessions, while Amanda had gone once and left halfway through. 4 months into our separation, I received an unexpected email from my youngest sister, Kate. Unlike the others, she had been less vocal during the conflicts often caught between loyalties. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," she wrote. "At first I was just angry and hurt like everyone else, but after reading through your document again with some distance, I started to see things differently. The financial counseling sessions were eye-opening for me, even though I only attended 2. I never realized how much you've sacrificed for all of us, or how we've taken your help for granted. I'm still processing everything, but I wanted you to know I'm working on understanding your perspective." It was the first acknowledgement from any family member that perhaps the problem wasn't simply my financial obsession, but a deeper pattern of unhealthy dynamics. I responded cautiously, thanking her for reaching out and expressing willingness to talk further when she felt ready. 2 weeks later, Kate and I met for coffee at a neutral location. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us careful with our words, but gradually warmed as Kate shared her realizations. "I started tracking my own spending after the counseling session," she admitted. "I was shocked, Naomi. I had no idea where my money was going. And when I thought about how you've been trying to help us understand this for years while we just made fun of you for it, I felt ashamed." "I never wanted anyone to feel ashamed," I said. "I just wanted us all to be financially secure so we could focus on our relationship rather than constant crises." Kate nodded. "The counselor said something that really hit me. She said financial boundaries are about respect, not rejection. That you were trying to respect yourself while still loving us. That single conversation didn't magically heal years of dysfunction, but it opened a door. Kate and I began rebuilding our relationship gradually, with clear boundaries. I made it explicit that I wouldn't provide financial assistance, and surprisingly, she never asked. Instead, she occasionally sought advice about budgeting or investing small amounts, actually listening to my suggestions rather than dismissing them. 5 months after the rupture, my parents reached out through a handwritten letter, a medium that forced deliberation rather than reactionary texting. The tone was less defensive than I had expected, acknowledging that perhaps they had relied too heavily on my financial support and taken my generosity somewhat for granted. It wasn't the full recognition of problematic patterns I had hoped for, but it was a start. "We miss you," they wrote. "Family gatherings aren't the same without you, and not just because you're always willing to help, because you're our daughter and we love you." I responded with my own letter expressing appreciation for their outreach while reiterating my boundaries clearly. "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship," I wrote, "but it must be based on mutual respect, which includes respect for my financial choices and boundaries." The negotiations were delicate and sometimes tense. My mother struggled the most with the new dynamic, occasionally slipping into guilt-inducing comments or subtle digs about my strict rules. My father somewhat surprisingly adapted more readily, even asking for book recommendations about personal finance. My brother Tyler remained the most resistant, maintaining that I had betrayed the family by exposing our financial history and refusing to help with his car repair. We established a cordial but distant relationship, interacting at family gatherings but rarely one-on-one. Amanda eventually came around after her own financial crisis, when her credit card debt reached a breaking point. Rather than asking me for money, she reluctantly attended a financial counseling session and began the difficult work of addressing her spending habits. Our relationship slowly improved as she gained insight into her own patterns. 6 months after the Easter exclusion, I cautiously accepted an invitation to a family dinner. Walking into my parents' home felt surreal after the intense conflict and separation. The conversation was initially stilted, with everyone carefully avoiding financial topics. But as the evening progressed, I noticed subtle changes. My father mentioned a budget app he'd started using. My mother proudly pointed out decorations she'd made herself rather than purchased. Kate shared her excitement about paying off one of her credit cards completely. They were small shifts but meaningful ones. No one asked for money, made snide comments about my financial discipline, or dismissed my choices as obsessive. For perhaps the first time in our adult relationship, we interacted as family members, rather than as financial patron and dependents. The healing process was gradual and nonlinear. There were setbacks and old patterns occasionally resurfaced, but my unwavering commitment to maintaining financial boundaries actually improved our relationships over time. Without money as a constant undercurrent, we were forced to develop healthier ways of connecting and supporting each other. My personal growth through this difficult period was equally significant. I learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish but necessary for authentic relationships. I discovered that my worth wasn't tied to financial rescues or sacrifices. And perhaps most importantly, I realized that true generosity comes from a place of freedom and choice, not obligation or guilt. The painful journey from financial enabler to self-respect taught me that money boundaries are ultimately about much more than dollars and cents. They're about honoring your own life path while allowing others the dignity of facing their own consequences and choices. Today, our family gatherings are different. Not perfect, not without occasional tension, but fundamentally changed. I no longer dread family events as potential financial ambushes. I can celebrate holidays without the weight of unspoken expectations. And when I give gifts or assistance now, it comes from genuine desire, rather than manipulation or obligation. The Easter exclusion that once felt like cruel rejection ultimately became the catalyst for breaking unhealthy patterns that had dominated my family relationships for decades. Sometimes being shut out of a door you've always kept open for others is exactly what you need to find your own path forward. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Did it change your relationship for better or worse? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share with someone who might need encouragement to set their own healthy financial boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and others is to stop enabling destructive patterns even when it hurts. Your financial peace is worth protecting.